through the UK for carrying this work out. That's me up on the hoist. And there's just one of the other telescopes, a smaller one. This is just some of the other equipment. This is the North Sky camera system. Originally set up for meteors, fireballs, satellites, and also for AOPs. And this is the area that I'll be going into later on at all. And just recently, under construction, is a radio telescope. This is for studying the radio bands of the electromagnetic spectrum. I'm also involved in 3D imaging, and I've developed specific systems in that area to do 3D screens, 3D volumetric imaging, and I'm looking actually at one for astronomy for the present time. This is an example of a piece of equipment that I built for looking at 3D images. So, that's just a little bit about the background, and now I'd like to just briefly actually what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to give you a background on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence from the conventional side, and then I'll be going into optical SETI that has been accepted in the last 15 years as a research tool for detecting optical signals. And then I'll be going into observable manifestations. What would you expect as a signal? And then I'll go into a theory for UFOs. And then I'll be going into communication technologies, or methodologies, other types of communications, and communication projects that I've carried out with teams. So just giving you a quick, brief background. From what we've learned as experienced on Earth in science, it seems that both extraterrestrial civilizations arise from a long process of apparently incidental interaction, astrophysically, physically on a planet, and also chemical factors you have to consider as well. There's a part missing. Astronomers are looking, may look technical this bit, but actually this is actually a spectrum of the Earth. What would the Earth look like if you were looking for life on other planets? And this is the typical type of thing to do with water, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen. And this is the type of thing we're trying to find at the present time. It's called researching into extrasolar planets. And the problem is trying to distinguish an atmosphere from the star, and that's the problem at the present time. Instrumentation doesn't have the resolution to distinguish that. So you could say we've arrived from the sun into molecules, and from the molecules eventually to DNA. So hopefully we might find other people like us, something similar. If it's happened here, it's probably happened somewhere else in the universe, other galaxies, other stars, other planets. You have to have the right conditions for a created planet like ours, and you have to have the right distance from its own sun. And we're the third planet from our sun. We're in what we would call a biosphere, and with the solar energy from the sun and our atmosphere, it eventually did create life. These are stars within 30 light years from us. These are all the nearest stars that we know within 30 light years. And there are some stars that are very similar to our own sun. It's reckoned through a particular formula called the Drake equation, which is might eventually find something like that. Some civilizations will be unified with a universal vision, flourishing, exploring other stars. And then you might have other civilizations that may have destroyed themselves. A civilization will explore its local solar system and harness its energy. Probably at a more advanced level. An intelligent civilization may be at a stage has developed technology and other, explore for others possibly, and wants to explore for others. That's it.
Model.
Interstellar distance in perspective. Our sun is about 93 million miles away. We call it 1 AU, 1 astronomical unit. The nearest star is about 10 to the 6th AU. That's 10 million AU. So that's our sun there. That's where we are. That's where the nearest star is, Alpha Centauri. SETI is involved in two areas. One is the microwave observing project and research of intelligent signals on radio waves. And there's instrumentation that's used on these radio telescopes. And then you have optical SETI, which is involved with unidirectional signals from intelligence, and optical telescopes using photometric detectors, these detectors picking up very sensitive light. And these are the bands that the radio and optical people work in. There's one called the water hull, which is the hydrogen area. It's a very clear area, there's less noise, so there's a higher chance of getting signals. And then there's the optical area, which is mainly in the visible region. So a radio telescope, one of the biggest ones on Earth at the moment, is a 300-meter radio dish at Arecibo. And it's fairly well known through, you might have heard of SETI at home. There's been roughly about 4.2 million people around the Earth that have tapped into this through their internet. And the idea is that there's a possibility one might pick up a signal using radio techniques. This is an example of the energy from, say, a signal at that power, 66 gigahertz. Sorry about the technical bit now, but at 100 light years. So far, SETI using radio has failed to detect any intelligent signal in its 44-year history. Maybe one of the problems is what's called SETI incrementalism. Just because our civilization had discovered radio back 70 or 80 years ago, that we're using radio techniques for this period. In recent times, when the laser was discovered back in 1960 by Towns, that this application has only been recently used in the last 15 years. It doesn't... Oh yeah, can you hear me at the back? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So it's assumed that there may be a civilization or civilizations out there that are using radio techniques and also optical lasers. So that's what's expected. The chances are there. I think they're very remote. And I think this is the manifestation of 44 years of research that hasn't happened. And the SETI elite, as I call them, are not prepared to open up to other methodologies. Gradually they're warming to the possibility of interstellar probes within our solar system, but that hasn't happened in the last about 40 years. optical SETI, it's assumed that there may be a laser out there with a pulsing intelligent signal. The method has been tried for about 15 years. This is some of the instrumentation, particularly in the United States, that are dedicated to optical SETI. So that's the main telescope, and then you have the instrumentation. This would be the photometric detector, picking up a signal. Another approach has been to look at the infrared part of the spectrum. That is, you're going beyond the visible into the invisible area of the spectrum. And there was a theory put forward by a man called Dyson that we ought to research into artificial circumstellar structures produced by an advanced civilization. Research would indicate ET civilizations that produce observable effects by the manipulation of their circumstellar region. In other words, they're going to use the sun as for harnessing energy. So they're creating a structure around it. That's the structure. This has to do with true artificial circumstellar envelopes that circle the central star from which the ET civilization would harvest energy. How do you look for Dyson spheres? Using powerful infrared telescopes. Unfortunately, you can't use an infrared telescope, a powerful one that is on the Earth, because you have an atmosphere which creates opacity that blocks the infrared coming through. So you have to use one in outer space. And you research exclusively suns that are very similar to our own sun. And you're looking for excess infrared anomalies. In plain language, you're looking for a lot more infrared that's normal. In other words, artificial, not natural infrared. So that would be the normal, natural line there, but that would be the excess artificial that an astronomer would look out for. Enrico Fermi, this scientist back in 1950, stated, if they exist, why don't we see them? It's called the Fermi paradox. Now he will see one now. Other methodologies have been message left by terrestrial interplanetary probes in the solar system. Now, I don't know if you remember, back in the 1970s, you had Pioneer 10, Pioneer 11, then Voyager 1, Voyager 2. These were specifically sent out to Jupiter, and Saturn, and Uranus. And at this point in time, they're well beyond the solar system. On each of these probes, there were messages in this form, in the hope that other probes or hidden ETs, for hope, might see these and be able to extrapolate what this means. That's the one for Pioneer, and that was the one for Voyager. There's also a record, if you have a record player out there. If there are ET probes in the solar system, it's possible we would be able to find them. Now I want to get on to different levels of ET civilizations in the evolution. resolution. I'm just going to show you an ET civilization that would be 2,000 years old. And the option would be, I think there would be timid home bodies. A technical civilization that stays at home, but they communicate, explores the solar system with robotic probes. The next one is 3,000 years old. And the option here would be, these would be backyard conquerors. Technical civilization travel, but only conquer their own solar system and limit themselves to communications with other stellar systems. Option 3, slow travelers. A technical civilization travels, conquering their own solar system and also several nearby stellar systems using mobile Dyson spheres. On to the next evolved civilization, 10,000 years old. Fast travelers. A technical civilization become completely nomadic. They would have traveled the cosmos. We don't know would they be a predator or altruistic. Next civilization would be 1 million years old. The option here would be to be trans-universalists. Technical civilization jump from one universe to another. Now we go on to SETI. SETI is a very new area of SETI, not accepted yet. There's still a struggle. Search for extraterrestrial visitation. The definition is that the possibility of ET robotic type probes within 50 AU of our own sun. Where have they come from? Or sorry, if they have reached the solar system, where have they come from? From other planets in this galaxy, or another galaxy? From other dimensions? How do they do it? Manned or robotic probes? Using wormholes? Using zero-point energy? Using quantum tunneling? And possibly teleportation. And there's actually more methodologies. This is a 3D model, but you're seeing it as flat, based on a civilization that would be about 10,000 years old. And These are all the major routes in our galactic plane and south of it. I don't expect you to see all the details of it. It's just to give you an idea of the pattern of the most likely routes for interstellar probes to come to this solar system. Let's see how some there in the centre. These are Earth's robotic probe launches. This is the amount of probes that we have sent out, man-made probes that we have sent out in the solar system, not artificial satellites that have been sent around the Earth. At present time, there's roughly about 135 up to 2005. But on this graph here, it's expected that we would be sending out thousands of probes in the future, per year, not just 100. So the current research focus at the moment in SETI and SETI is distant stars. There is no interest at all in the solar system or around the Earth. SETI, only going a very short time, there has been a couple of astronomers that have had interest in this area. Giannis, Greek astronomer, had done some work in the asteroid belt, looking for infrared signatures in the asteroid belt between Earth and Mars. Other alternative approaches? Would other approaches that present manifestations fit an extraterrestrial hypothesis? What about UFOs? There has been some work in this area, scientifically done and funded, not well known in the public eye. Project Starlight International cost $1 million back in 1976, set up by Ray Stanford, and they had a permanent monitoring station, 2 astronomers, and they were funded not by an institution or university, but by donations from people that were really interested in this area. And they did get some results. They discovered that there was a component in the UFO that was in the infrared, but couldn't get any more funding to follow it through any further. Then, also in the mid-70s, Professor Hartley Rutledge from the University of Missouri, he and his students, with a range of equipment, studied this area as well. And they came out with some interesting results to do with the size of UFOs, speed. We got a lot of photographic data, but the problem was lack of funding. We do know that in a major repository in the United States that deals with UFOs, there has been 3,600 military and commercial aircraft pilot reports of encounters worldwide. Most cases corroborate with radar, multiple witnesses, both ground and air. This is from NARDAC, 2005. 4,050 landing traces. These are the encounters that have taken place, spacecraft that have come down, gone up, but have left traces from around the world, going back from the 1940s. And this is with a guy called T. Rowe, 2005. And there's been numerous daytime and nighttime photos and video footage that have been analysed to show that there is authenticity to some of the video footage. You have to rule out the 95%. We all understand about that. It's the 5% we're interested in. Okay, just narrowing it down a bit further, how did I get into this bit? I was actually asked to do this by another astronomer, at Skull Planetarium, Herman van Belgen, its director. He was getting telephone calls over a 3-year period from 89 to 91 from different people, solicitors, restaurateurs, farmers, builders, etc. And I started another new factory down there, and I was saying to them, I was very pally with them, I said, looking for another challenge in astronomy, you got anything for me? You know? They said, well, we're getting all these calls, would you be interested? And I said, okay, I'll have a look at it. So, not knowing anything about UFOs at all, absolute ignoramus. I looked into it, got all these telephone numbers, met all these people, and I was totally confused. A whole year, I just couldn't figure it out. None of the data, what these people were saying, fitted anything that I knew, meteorologically and astronomically, even in atmospheric physics. So, in my nature, I don't give up. And I decided, right, I am going to look further to this. This is real, and I'm not going to deny it. And thank God I wasn't discoloured by anything to do with ufology, because I knew nothing about it. All I read was stuff in the newspapers. And it was meant to be a joke or something, these things. But this was a reality. So I actually contacted various organisations in the UFO area, in the States, Germany, France and the UK, and I got computerised data going back to the 1940s, thousands and thousands of reports. And from that, I discovered that there was common features, characteristics on the stuff that was seen in this little part of Ireland, southwest Ireland. So I was realising, well, this is a global phenomenon. So from there, I thought, right, I think I'll investigate this further. And I investigated then, I started some workshops in this area, because I thought, well, how am I going to meet people? I mean, you can set up, say, an astronomy workshop, astronomy meeting, and, okay, you get amateur astronomers along, but how do you do it with UFOs? So, anyway, I put some posters around the West Cork, Kerry area, and I had 70 people turned up for the first workshop, so I thought, well, there must be something serious here. And so that's where I started, and from there, I've never looked back, and I'll be going on to some more stuff later on. I discovered that there was a high concentration of UFOs in West Cork, particularly in this area called Conf. And then I got interested in, well, maybe patterns and cycles to this. And so I published some articles regarding patterns and cycles. And another gentleman in the UK, another gentleman in the UK was doing the same work. And he had worked out a theory on UFO events, and I sent him all my data. And I was actually sort of going to give up on UFOs then, because I thought, well, yeah, what can I do on this now? Investigations and data and so forth. And then he came back, hey, you've got 80% fit. I was just so excited. This is a wow, 80% fit on all the data. So he showed me his theory. I went over to his place. I spent a whole week there trying to understand his theory. I came away only understanding half of it. But anyway, this is the brief of it. And his theory is based on 10,500 reports. And he refined it down to 1,300 most reliable observations going back to the 1880s. And came up with a model that demonstrates a pattern of activity that may indicate a program of observation of Earth by hypothetical extraterrestrial sources. Apparent established navigational links with stars were discovered, star-related orbital tracks. In fact, some of the stuff I sent to do with 3D modelling of stars within our own association of stars seemed to link in actually what he was doing. It seemed to fit a pattern. The tracks projected onto a rotating Earth to reduce corridors, and the corridors appear to have been used for over 125 years. And this would predate Earth-based aeronautical technology. Frequent meteoric injections of space vehicles into partial orbits of Earth, delivery and retrieval were observed, rather like the Apollo. Computerized time graphs have been successfully used to indicate likely windows of opportunity to observe these anomalous events, and I'll be going into this later on. There are about 660 tracks that intersect the equator, I won't go into very, very little detail on this, but just to say that it appears to work as a theory, and also on the events they appear to work as well. The event when it occurs has to be, there are qualifying limits within plus or minus 20 minutes. What actually happens, we think, is that you have, say, a large craft, could be in the upper stratosphere, which is on a specific orbit, which delivers a number of probes, say robotic probes, and possibly the same craft or maybe another one, we don't know at all, but they will retrieve these particular probes. At this point, that's as much as we know. I mean, this is only hypothetical at this point in time. Now, I'd like to go on to switching from that to a scientific project that's called Project Hestelund that has involved a college in Norway and also eventually involved Italian scientists as well. There is a website for this, it's called Project Hestelund, and they have dedicated instrumentation dealing with lights in the sky. One of the conclusions up to 2000, and this was by Dr. Massimo Teodorani from the Institute of Radio Astronomy Bologna, is that they may have discovered an unknown high-energy mechanism in the atmosphere, or the consequence of some propulsion mechanism of unknown origin. The time graph of the astronautical theory was applied to Hestelund, and it showed windows of opportunity when events may take place, where the straight lines and the curved lines intersect. There's a possibility of a close encounter taking place. And when a comprehensive analysis of the 1984 Hestelund phenomenon showed a significant correlation with the theory, of the 117 total observations in a 35-day period, 103 occurred within plus or minus 20 minutes, qualifying limits for an acceptable correlation. And the two most striking visual observations of these are the later teams between Italian and Norwegian scientists, that there were very precise correlations with the timings. So going back to the southwest of Ireland, the UFO events indicated by the red dots, these were during the period of 91 to 94, and a reliable sample of 15 UFO events fitted the theory. There were 35 UFO investigations from 91 to 97 in counties Cork and Kerry. This is a sample of 15 UFO events, provided an 80% fit to the theory of UFO events. And this will be within the plus or minus 20 minutes. And you can see the different type, those who are familiar with ufology, you have the different types of close encounters. You have, say, CE4, a lot of them are CE1s, CE3. This will be based on Alan Hynek's classification of close encounters. Then when you superimpose the orbital tracks from the astronomical theory, it was no surprise that where these events were taking place. This is the area in question just there. Come over. We had computerized time graphs for the Bantry area, that's in the southwest. This is where all this activity was taking place. And some successful windows of opportunity or events have taken place in this region. We've actually tried out the time graphs for future events. We've also discovered that there are shared tracks going through 3 locations in Ireland. Well, actually there are more shared tracks, but this specific one is to do with time, a specific time in the year, 13th of December 1997, it just so happened that with these shared tracks at 3 locations, the event may take place, like in 3 places at the same time. And I set up 2 teams, one in Boyle and one in Dublin. I couldn't get anybody for Bantry, unfortunately. But we actually did get photographic footage and video footage for this. This has been shown on a documentary, and I think it was shown on the Late Late Show on RT television. I'm going to the Boyle area, this general area here that we're where the conference is. These are UFO events in ringed that have taken place over, say, a 5-year, 6-year period from up to the year 2000. And we appear to have a correlation with this track here, and one for this one here, and also this here. Appear. That looks fairly close, that one there. We tried out a prediction, got in contact with other people in England and in Europe. This was for prediction on February 23rd, 1999. And a UFO that was observed in Boyle at happened to be 8:30 in the evening. The same one was seen in the UK and northern Italy within about half an hour. And we calculated that over the 1,200 mile distance at a speed of Mach 30. It doesn't seem to fit, I don't think, any of the secret military, US military aircraft.
Where was it in England?
Reading, Southern England. These have been successful events using the theory. It was important that the public, I felt at this stage that if you're going to have more detectors, how do you get more detectors out there? These are the detectors. So using the media, and this is all fun, by using the media, it was important that the public were informed through the media of when events may take place at specific locations around Ireland. And these are some of the successful events. So I won't go through them in detail, but there are locations in Camola, Bantry, Kilgarvan in County Kerry, Boyle in County Roscommon. And different dates, times, and but also what we discovered, something quite remarkable, was, and I'll be going to this later on, that we discovered that there's, appears, it's not the evidence yet for this, but there appears to be a link between consciousness and the events taking place before they take place. And now I'm going to lead into this other methodology and how it came about. Some of you may be familiar in ufology of the Papua New Guinea case of 1959. This was a mission on the coast of Papua New Guinea Island, run by Reverend Father Gill. And there appear to be UFO activity, and particularly constructions like this appearing to the natives. And this craft was witnessed. There was no photographs, there was only drawings at the time, but this is roughly what it looked like. The craft was witnessed by 38 persons. Other UFO activity was also taking place at other nearby locations of similar craft. And communications took place by hand-waving gestures by the ETs and humans. So that's physical and conscious, you could say, communication going on. Now, across reports about people seeing UFOs and they want to see them up closer, and the UFO would come to them. And it just so happened that I was involved in, I developed a specialized telescope back in the 91-92 period, and I gave a presentation on it to an International Astronomical Union. This is all professionals now, to do with robotic telescopes. But what was specialized in this telescope is that with a detector, is that you could pick up stars that flash very fast. And in particular, there are stars called flare stars. They give out flashes every few hours. And a popular area for these flare stars is the Pleiades. Then, in January to September 94, I was convinced that besides dealing with outer space, that there must be a link to do with inner space as well to do with this. And I got in touch with what they call a shaman. I didn't know what a shaman was at the time, but I was told that this might be the person you would need to help you to deal with inner space. And I was quite happy to explore this whole area in order to research this whole thing out further. And so I actually worked under a shaman for 6 months. And from that, on away, and then about an hour later, this other man overheard my conversation to do with astronomy. And he said, do you know what Alcyona is? Alcyona is, Eamonn? He said, do you think it's a plant, you know, a flower? I said, no, actually it's the main star of the Pleiades. It's the central star of the group of stars that goes around the Pleiades. And he invited me actually to his house, and he had a friend there from Germany, and she overheard this conversation and said, well, you guys must be interested in this, the Pleiadian agenda. And I said, what's that? So the Pleiades was coming in on a frequent basis, and I think as you become a bit more aware, you realise, well, this message is coming through here, you know, something to do with the Pleiades. So I actually I started carrying out inner space work, because I felt actually it might be possible to do contact work on an interdimensional basis, and possibly physically as well. So I carried this out for about a 3-month period, and nothing happened. I didn't expect, you know, totally open without expecting anything. But actually, the result came, which absolutely astounded me. And I have the evidence for this. I have the people for the evidence. They're in another continent from here. And apparently, 9 months later, I got a telephone call from this American man who was in the general area, and he said, was I interested in cosmology and UFOs, astronomy? I said, no, I've given up UFOs now, but I can tell you some experts you can go to. And I was nearly actually going to put the phone down. And he said, no, I really want to meet you. I said, okay. So he came. I was living actually in a wooden house I built in a remote area of South Carrick, in a forest. Although I had a factory in another place. I mean, just an alternative energy systems. And so he came along, spent half an hour talking about cosmology. He seemed to know a reasonable amount about astronomy. And I sort of kept thinking, well, why is he here? What's going on here? And then he changed his tone. He said to me, look, don't be shocked, but a group of us in the States picked up your name, not through the internet, but from my teacher, he said. Apparently, this woman who has this channel to the Pleiades, and this Pleiadian extraterrestrial group came through her and kept repeating my name. They looked at the map, wondering, where is this guy? Is he in Australia? So one of the guys was a sensitive, and he looked at it and said, oh, I think he's in Europe. So he dedicated his time trying to find him. And it didn't take him long. It only took him 5 days. Sorry, about a week and a half. He flew into Schiphol and went into Belgium, looking around. Belgium, now he's more west. Went into France, now he's more west. Went into England, into Heathrow, right, all around the place, now he's more west. Flew into Dublin and thought, yeah, he's more west. I'll go down to Cork. So he ended up in Skibbereen. Anybody knows Skibbereen's in the southwest? And so he went around to all the shops asking for this guy here. Lucky enough, someone knew me. Said, yeah, he's in Bantry, or he had a factory there or something. So he went to Bantry, stayed at a hotel for 3 nights there, went around to all the shops again. 3 people knew about it. Oh yeah, he's in Sneed. So this is how we got the call. And this was the next journey, starting. And so he said, could I ring up my teacher? I said, sure, yeah. At that stage I just couldn't believe it. And then I heard the two of them talking for half an hour on this. And this was like a whole new language, the new age language, if you call it. I'm so used to the whole scientific approach to things. And it took me a while to sort of recover, to figure out, obviously, whatever we do inside is a consequence outside. Well, this was it. So, I've got to sort of follow something here, So there's obviously this experiential side, not just the mechanistic sides of science. And it seems that, I think, in the mechanistic approach in science, you observe that, in a laboratory, an experiment. But in this case, I've decided to immerse myself within the experiment itself. Other things started happening, which I didn't expect, is that there's a come round to Catherine, I think, to do with crystal healing, which I know nothing about. And this guy, a friend of a friend, said, oh, would you be interested in crystal healing? And I said, oh, okay. There's nothing wrong with it, I don't think. But can't be too arrogant, I suppose. So anyway, in this crystal healing, I had all these thoughts coming through. And I got this sort of dreamy type visions of different people, but one specifically was of a man walking down one of the Kerry Mountains, which I know pretty well over the years. But he didn't look like a Kerry man, he looked like a southern Mediterranean type guy. He had a moustache and a beard, and I thought nothing of it. One of these dreamy things. And then I told the guy that was doing crystal healing, because I felt absolutely zapped after the whole thing. You could call it shackles of blocked and all this stuff. And I stayed with a friend of mine here at Dingle, and coming back, we went around Dingle town about 20 minutes. It was on a Sunday. And there was an Irish-speaking bookshop. I was interested in one specific, which was Towers of Arms, which I'm interested in megaliths. But at the back of a lot of these bookshops, you have cafes. And there was the guy I saw. And I was absolutely, inside, I thought, well, how am I going to handle this one? So I got some coffee with a stranger and sat in front of him. And because it was tourist period, he eventually broke the ice. And I said, look, I saw you under a pyramid having crystal healing. And I said, are you Italian or something? Or do you do with rocks? He said, yeah, I'm a sculptor of rocks. And he brought up this rock. It was about 1.5 feet high. And it had the yin and the yang on it. Now, I know that's the balance of two fishes. But, from there, many other things started happening. And I realised that it was important actually to look into this whole area of remote viewing, visualisation, which when I rang out the crystal healer and I told him the situation, he said, look, I won't charge you anything at all, I'll train you, I'll show you how to do it all. And he did, it took about 3 months. I told him what I was trying to do in the scientific area, so which was totally unconventional. But I filled out, so it could be done. And, so we'll go on from there. So preparing for contact is essential for results. We will eventually have to learn to develop our consciousness to tap into a wide spectrum of reality. I'm convinced that by applying two key elements here, one is the scientific and the other is the experiential. By bringing the two together as two disciplines, the scientific which is mechanistic, and the other one can be done scientifically as well, which is experiential, lays the foundation for a potential breakthrough for the evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence for the scientific community. Science is in the scientific area, you're applying instrumentation for gathering data. But at the same time, you can use specific bands of consciousness for communications. And that's where I'm coming from. So in the search for extraterrestrial visitation, or for short SETI, you're taking in the whole sky. You're taking in everything, dealing with fireballs, satellites, meteors, helicopters, airliners, aircraft, the whole lot. So you have to design instrumentation. If you're doing SETI, you have to apply a range of instrumentation, a range of detectors covering many bands. One thing I do know is that there are 10 times the amount of UFOs seen in the infrared than there are in the visible region. So there should be an emphasis on the infrared detectors for this area. And this came about, actually, interestingly enough, in Mexico by the Mexican government, who were dealing with what they thought was drug smugglers for this area. They were using infrared techniques and picked up a number of these constructions. So I have a passion for instrumentation, and I'll go through. I won't go through all the technicalities, but this is the present setup. It's an all-sky camera system made up of 11 cameras, and there are two tracking platforms which are 150 meters apart. Basically, the two camera systems, 150 meters apart. And then there's a means of actually capturing all this imagery. As anything moves in the sky, each camera is working on a particular sector. I have the whole sky broken up into thousands of little squares, so that anything manifests itself, which wouldn't be conventional, or just moves in a linear fashion or any fashion at all, I'd be able to pick it up to a certain magnitude, to a certain brightness. I can only get down to the 7th magnitude known as the Zenith astronomy. That's just slightly beyond the naked eye. And these two tracking platforms can, through what we call a multiplexer, can lock onto the object and start recording information. What I'm particularly interested in is the infrared, but also the composition of these objects. So I won't go through all that stuff, but these are the other platforms. Infrared camera there, and there's a small spectrograph in there. So just introducing you to the spectrum of reality, because one needs to understand the foundation before applying these methodologies in contact work. Not a gobbledygook here, I hope you can take some of it in anyway. But basically, reality is it's a linear, relative reality, and non-local, non-linear reality. It sounds real. A lot of mumbo jumbo, isn't it? Though simultaneously exist as reality. There's a whole level of reality that we, shall I say, particularly in Western society, we haven't actually understood at all. And it is there, it is a reality. And there are other life forms that I'm convinced that are actually using that reality now. and there is a means of contact. And I've actually shown you demonstrations as we go on. The universe consists of both linear and nonlinear, or transcendent aspects, which, while seeming paradoxical, simultaneously exist at every point in time and space and non-time space. I think, from the science end, I think we're gradually getting there. From this point of view, every point in time and space exists in every other point in time and space through the quality of non-locality. This is the foundation to get to set up a common ground, I think, with extraterrestrials. There are different levels of consciousness. I don't really want to go into all the different bands of consciousness, but it's all there. And when you do go into this area, trying this out, then you find other experiences occurring. You think it's by accident these things happen, but these are just some examples which appear at various points for an individual, you know, like telepathy, lucid dreams, remote viewing, healing abilities. It's like healing at a distance, or even physically healing people, that is. And there are many other experiences, you know, too numerous to count. Every higher, intelligent life form is potentially capable of having all these experiences. I'm convinced about that. This includes humans and other higher life forms which have evolved on other planets. The only prerequisite is to be able to be aware of awareness itself. If you can be aware of awareness, then you can be aware of awareness in its non-local, unbound form. Consciousness is the integrating thread, the highest common denominator, and the foundation for communications in a unified way. One of the aspects for going into non-local reality, you can apply what's called remote viewing. This is not imagination, not using just your imagination. It's not at that level. It's not visualization. It's actually quite deep. You're going into this full silence. You're reducing your, okay, some people here might be using meditation techniques where you're reducing your inner dialogue and you have all these little thoughts coming in and you're flicking them out. But you get to a point where it's total silence, and that's actually the foundation for going for the next step for the communications. So, in the remote viewing, it's the ability to see, as a metaphor, the non-local mind, events, places, people, regardless of space or time. So it doesn't matter anywhere in the universe. That's the incredible thing, although you might think it's incomprehensible, but you can actually tap into every part of the universe. By accessing non-local mind, you can see any place and any time, past, present, or future. I think it's like everything else in life. When you take different steps and you get a number of experiences and you get them confirmed, then you get on to the next step. Someone says, "Sure, do you believe it? I've done it," say, or that person's done all that. You're going to the next step for whatever that goal is in the end. So once this is understood and one becomes proficient at accessing the aspect of one's consciousness, which is non-local, then the extraordinary slowly becomes routine and all things are possible. So when you're at that level, you can project information sequentially to potential extraterrestrials. The extraterrestrials, I've no doubt, aren't there in the universe, but this is a means of a way, a vehicle for communicating to the ETs about your location. So don't worry about your location, but you have to show them. I met an animal communicator there some years back, And the reason why it convinced me this one is that I have a little farm, okay? And we got these new ducks in, and the pond was about 300 metres away. And I just couldn't figure, how do I get these guys out? You know, come sort of running around. Well, a friend of ours is an animal communicator, and she said to me, Eamonn, they created a vision board. And I created a vision, and they were just going along to the lake, 300 metres. So the point is, you can do this with any creature. Being aware of non-local state, you can show the Milky Way, the association of stars near our sun, our solar system, our planet, continent, island, Carrick On-Shannon, and within meters to your location. And you can keep repeating that. Now I'm going on to another methodology. This is called co-creative science. This one I've been using just in the last few years. And I must say to you, it's the most efficient methodology of communication I've ever come across. You can go beyond remote viewing. All consciousness, human and nature, on our planet seeks to reflect and flow perfectly through form. It is a natural dynamic contained within all life. Nature supplies form, and because all form has combined with consciousness, all matter has inherent in it two dynamics. An involution dynamic, that's the matter, means an action that is supplied by nature, and then the evolution dynamic, that's the definition, direction and purpose that is supplied by consciousness. These two dynamics work in partnership, and when left undisturbed, this partnership functions in balance. That is, the involution and evolution dynamics are synchronized with one another, thus creating a state of balance. When you apply that foundation for a new methodology of communications, we tried this out for the very first time in 1998 with 6 people. And the whole idea was to have a landing, believe it or not. I thought, well, let's go for it. But it depends who's there with you. If you have one person that has some baggage, maybe a bit religious, and whatever, it brings it down to the lowest common denominator, and the whole thing's aborted. But we did end up with a partial success. I'll go through that. February the 26th, 19 now. No cameras were allowed at this because we had to answer ourselves and all the stuff, you know. That's where I would want all the instrumentation there for this one, you know. But all I can say to you is that in February the 26th, 19, a team of 6 used this methodology to not only vector in a UFO, but also communicate it with successful results. The method is complex, and I'm not going to go into it here, but I have material actually to whoever's interested in this. And by the way, you don't have to use it for ETs, you use it on your engine of your car. You know? Everything's intelligent, including that chair. The method is complex, but required a lot of preparation of balancing the energies at proposed landing site and humans. This involved the clear intention by all. If you don't have crystal clarity by the whole group, it's not going to work. So you have to do things like balancing the soil out, the atmosphere, going right up into outer space on the edge of the 33-mile limit, the definition of outer space, and constantly making adjustments. It's ever-changing. It was decided in the end not to go for a landing due to lack of preparation on some of the participants. But what we did get, now, you're given stuff at the most awkward time. This happened on 5:15 in the morning, on a Sunday morning, in a valley, a remote valley in Carrick. And what I thought was a satellite coming over, one of the team asked it, this satellite that we thought, to do a figure 8 or an infinite sign in the sky. And it did it in 10 minutes. A large sign in the sky. For me, that was the confirmation that this is intelligent. And it works by thought. It was a shame I didn't have a camera, but I just wasn't allowed. It just wasn't right at all. I feel at a later stage, as we advance, this is such early stuff I'm doing, but at a much later stage, I'm convinced that we may get permission, instrumentation, and demonstrate this to the public possibly. So, could call it anything, the next generation ufology of stars, maybe. I believe myself, in time, ufology will disappear. I think ufology will be totally phased out, and we'll be dealing with the likes of extraterrestrials. Convinced about that. And it's up to everybody, taking the initiative, the citizens' initiative in this, to pull it off. I'm convinced we can do it. So I'm very optimistic. And I'd like to show you now, for the first time in history, well, I think it may be history, I don't know, but apparently I was approached there in early '97, Carlton Television in London. I didn't expect this one, by the way. But we applied the astronomical theory and also remote viewing with a team. And we got our result. It was the first time on television. It's not like it seems to be known at all, no reaction from anybody. In fact, I was very disappointed by the media. And then I had to realise, well, maybe they're not ready for this. I'm going too far ahead of myself. And because whoever it is back in the editorial side in London, behind these studios, probably saw all this stuff. I think they cut most of it out. And but I was very disappointed after. I mean, we're both trying to do science here. There's obviously politics involved, or well, it may not be politics. I think people can't seem to integrate this into their system. So anyway, I just want to, because I'm fine, can you put on the tape there, please? So I was quite naive about the media, so this is actually at a location called Camhola, where all this activity is. Thank you. And 3 teams were set up. A surveillance team with cameras, telescopes, etc. The television team, we got 4, and there was 4 of us doing remote viewing. And I was using a transceiver so I could communicate with the others half a mile away to tell them that we could see it in here, and then they could see it outside. So whatever happens in here in inner space, if there's an action here, there's a consequence in outer space as well. That's the key to it. So what you're going to see in here now is a censored, actually, a censored film.
Oh, it's just taking 2 seconds to warm up.
Okay. Yeah, this was in February 1997. It was the first time we ever did this as an experiment. So we're using the combination of the astronomical theory. In other words, we've got time graphs to tell us, right, this event is going to come up, we hope. And at the same time, we're using remote viewing.
And as they're part of the draft, it actually stands out.
No, you're okay.
So to speak. That's why we see that flying.
Can you actually push it a bit further? Oh, that's it, yeah, we're okay, that's it, yeah.
The team believes that through meditation they can contact the aliens and vector in their spacecraft.
The meditation starts off by
and becoming aware of the awareness of the universe around you. So when you're in that state, you're leading up to a common ground with the extraterrestrials, because the extraterrestrials are using mind as well. The whole universe itself is mind, it's intelligent. What we see as space or a void is not a void at all. There is a potential in that void. We prepare for the encounter.
Now there it is there, actually, just on the right. Just coming in. There was actually 3 UFOs altogether. For about 5 minutes. They didn't show any of those. Then one came in close. They got their record, but they only showed just part of it.
Actually, directions where we are.
You can actually knock it off. That's it. Yeah. So that was my first taste of the media. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. That's.
Thank you very much, Eamonn. That was fascinating, wasn't it? Yeah. So I can see you all trying to do this remote viewing from the back garden. But I'll tell you something, if anybody does succeed, will you let me know? Please. Thank you. It would be very interesting to see whether anybody has success on this. So thank you very much indeed, Eamonn. We'll give another round of applause.
Some of the techniques he uses in terms of visualising its location, that sort of thing I use myself, so I can have a chat with him.
Who used to be a total skeptic, experiencing energy coming towards you, which seemed to come from us.
15 euro.
Navigation and how they got around.
You know, push the power.
Yes, we share a bit with a friend. Really a little
Well,
I'll just throw these in my car and I'll be back.
They're beautiful. Yeah.
As soon as we start to go in motion, where's the photographer fella? No, not him. Sorry, I didn't really like that.
well, enjoy.
We are. Aaron Cabral.
It's nice to for the next few hours. It's nice to be able to make euros and go there.
Leave Carrick On-Shannon and go up the River Shannon and then the Boyle River. We will return to Carrick On-Shannon again at 7:30 to collect some music for you, and then go.
This is just some of the other equipment. This is the North Sky camera system. Originally set up for meteors, fireballs, satellites, and also for AOPs. This is the area that I'll be going into later on at all. And just recently, under construction, is a radio telescope. This is for studying the radio bands of the electromagnetic spectrum. I'm also involved in 3D imaging, and I've developed specific systems in that area to do 3D screens, 3D volumetric imaging. and I'm looking actually at one for astronomy at the present time. This is an example of a piece of equipment that I built for looking at 3D images. So, that's just a little bit about the background, and now I'd like to just brief you actually what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to give you a background on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence from the conventional side, and then I'll be going into optical SETI that has been accepted in the last 15 years as a research tool for detecting optical signals. And then I'll be going into observable manifestations. What would you expect as a signal? And then I'll go into a theory for UFOs. And then I'll be going into communication technologies, or methodologies, other types of communications, and communication projects that I've carried out with teams. So just giving you a quick brief background. From what we've learned as experienced on Earth, this is just some of the other equipment. This is the normal sky camera system. Originally set up for meteors, fireballs, satellites, and also for AOPs. And this is the area that I'll be going into later on at all. And just recently, under construction, is a radio telescope. This is for studying the radio bands of the electromagnetic spectrum. I'm also involved in 3D imaging, and I've developed specific systems in that area to do 3D screens, 3D volumetric imaging, and I'm looking actually at one for astronomy at the present time. This is an example of a piece of equipment that I built for looking at 3D images. So, that's just a little bit about the background, and now I'd like to just brief you actually what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to give you a background on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence from the conventional side, and then I'll be going into optical SETI that has been accepted in the last 15 years as a research tool for detecting optical signals. And then I'll be going into observable manifestations. What would you expect as a signal? And then I'll go into a theory for UFOs. And then I'll be going into communication technologies, or methodologies, other types of communications, and communication projects that I've carried out with teams. So just giving you a quick brief background. From what we've learned as experienced on Earth in science, it seems that both extraterrestrial civilizations arise from a long process of apparently incidental interaction astrophysically, physically on a planet, and also chemical factors we have to consider as well. Oh, there's a part missing. Astronomers are looking, may look technical this bit, but actually this is actually a spectrum of the Earth. What would the Earth look like if you were looking for life on other planets? And this is the typical type of thing to do with water, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen. And this is the type of thing we're trying to find at the present time. It's called researching into extrasolar planets. And the problem is trying to distinguish an atmosphere from the star, and that's the problem at the present time. Instrumentation doesn't have the resolution to distinguish that. So you could say we've arrived from the sun into molecules, and from the molecules eventually to DNA. So hopefully we might find other people like us, something similar. That if it's happened here, it's probably happened somewhere else in the universe, other galaxies, other stars, other planets. You have to have the right conditions for a create a planet like ours, and you have to have the right distance from its own sun.